I'm Chamberlain. So.
Oh, you certainly will be needing the hydration for much later because the temperatures are set to soar much later, not only in Abuja, but in many parts of the country. It is a dry season after all. Good morning and welcome. I'm Maukwe Ogunyusu.
Well, the temperature is no less the same here in Lagos. This is the third mainland bridge again. I mean, a quick update on the repair work that is ongoing. You can see that one side is looking different from the other. Well, for the next 24 hours, between 12 noon today and 12 noon tomorrow, this bridge is going to be totally shut, going and coming to traffic because of a major aspect of the ongoing repair work that needs to be executed by the contractor. So please, alternative routes are beckoning. Yes, Marco, you're correct. That's about sometime in the afternoon yesterday, the temperature in Lagos was about 34 degrees. So hydration, 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 everyone. Good morning. This is Lagos. I'm Ayo Makinde.
I know what it takes to get people to get used to getting or staying hydrated.
Drinking water.
It's not like, well,
it's hard work, you know?
It's supposed to be easy, but sometimes it's not.
It's not.
Some of the things I would think are the easiest, it just turns out you have to put the effort. You have to put an effort in everything these days, don't you?
A little lemon actually helps you down that water faster.
So that's one option. You're supposed to go with at least water, preferably than sugary drinks, doctors will always tell you, but I assume a lot of people know this already. But moving on, today we have some scenario. Well, do you see Aya right there? Okay, we see you, no problem, we know. So today, the Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, some activity will be going on there this morning, and the heads of agencies there will be signing a performance bond with the minister. So, look, their word has got to be their bond with all of this. Remember, the president did do likewise with the minister, saying, look, you have to shape up or shape out. So it's not, the narrative to a lot of people is that it's not business as usual. But the results we see out there, okay, we'll see how we can talk about that. But that's one scenario that you should expect today.
Well, in Lagos, at the top of the next hour, 10 o'clock, business news is going to be, Business Morning is going to be coming to you. And guess what? The expected impact of the hike in the MPC is something to expect. The expected impact of the MPC's hike in the interest rate. Some understanding about that one. What exactly does that mean? How does it impact on anything? How does it impact on businesses? What's the OPS going to say? All of that conversation is up at the top of the next hour. Let's flip to the papers.
Okay, so also to remind you that the ministerial press briefing will be going on today. The Minister of Information will be hosting the Minister of Health. So they will be talking to the people about that sector. And so you might just also look out for that. That's another scenario that will play on today. All right, so taking you through some of the dailies this morning. The Daily Trust is the first one we've got for you here. Cost of living crisis. NLC suspends protests. Counter rally in Abuja, police halt demonstration in Maiduguri, Lagos CP gives water, biscuits to protesters. Oh, incidentally, that made news. That's Daily Trust.
I like that. The CP. We'll make it easier. Let's fuel.
Okay.
Well, no, that's actually showing empathy, I guess. I'm saying, well, for you, we're on your side. Vanguard Newspapers has this one. NLC gives 17-point demand to Tinubu, suspends protests. That's the lead story right there. Makinde joins protest in Oyo. That's for Vanguard Newspapers right here, the front page of Vanguard Newspapers. Makinde joins protest in Oyo, says there's Hunger, anger in the land. Protests needless, that's according to presidency. Says legitimate concerns being addressed. The story is on page 5 of the paper. A lot of people actually did note and notice that the governor was in the middle of the protesters. They were now wondering who are they going to give their letter to when he's in the middle of the protesters. Well, does that absolve him too of his own responsibility? Because whether or not we like it, this thing is actually at different levels of responsibility. You'll find details on page 5 of the paper. Let's leave it there for Vanguard newspapers.
Well, Mark, I really am waiting for who they will send the letter to, indeed, because as a fellow that's supposed... Anyway, the Nigerian Observer this morning has this one on its front page. Mixed reactions, as CBN hikes monetary policy rates to 22.75%, CRR at 45%, as fixed income market expected to see more patronage. Yesterday on Business Morning, on Sunrise Daily, Ine had this conversation with two gentlemen who put the likely hike between 200 and 700 basis points. But this is what we have. More details you'll find in the front page of this paper. The story continues on page 2. That's the lead story of the Nigerian Observer this morning.
Well, New Telegraph's theme is hardship protests. Restore industrial hubs, palliatives to farmers, fix refineries. NLC tells FG. Suspends nationwide protests, extends ultimatum to 14 days. Police dole out water, biscuits to protesters in Lagos as workers march against hunger across the country. 90% of labor's demands already addressed, ascribed to the minister. But beneath that lead story, Senate proposes 6-year single term for CBN governor.
The Guardian has this on the front page. MPC decision, concerns for OPS, that's organized private sector, as CBN moves against inflation, Naira speculators. They also have a photo splash of the different protests that happened in different parts of the country yesterday. That's right there on the front page of the Guardian newspapers. You also see Senate begins probe of Buhari's government. Buhari government's 30 trillion naira loan and Ajaokuta steel. That story is on page 3. Leave it there for the Guardian newspapers.
Look at the front page of the Nigerian News Direct this morning, and what do you find? So what they call salacious news. It would be Nigerian News Direct. How 10 trillion naira intervention funds by previous administrations damaged Nigeria's economy. Find the details on page 21. Of course, that story is ascribed to the governor of the central bank, as CBN raises benchmark interest rate to record 22.75%. Forensic analysis fingers $2.4 billion false FX claims. Wow. But that's the lead story of the Nigerian News Direct this morning.
Well, how about Business Day? I mean, since they talk economy there, well, Business Day also focuses on a similar narrative. Naira strengthens as CBN moves to stabilize the economy. Well, that happens to be the big story on the front page of Business Day, as they so describe it, and then raises MPR to 22.75%, CRR to 45%.
Well, I also remember that I heard him say very clearly to banks and all the other institutions which they regulate that they're entering the era of regulation. So we'll certainly be holding the CBN to that. It says, well, some of these regulations have already been in place, but enforcement has always been a challenge. So we'll see how it is that they continue to hold these institutions accountable. This Nigeria is right up next, and you see right there, hardship. NLC suspends nationwide protest, says objective has been achieved as workers in Sokoto, Osun, Edo, FCT, other states join rallies. Drama as police provide water, soft drinks, biscuits for Lagos protesters. I wonder what the drama was.
They must have been pleasantly surprised.
Yes, I guess that's what They certainly didn't see it coming. And perhaps, you know, the CP Lagos is certainly showing other CPs what exactly is expected for them. We're expecting not just to protect the protesters, but, you know, also perhaps extend the hand. After all, if NLC is protesting and on behalf of Nigerians, policemen too are Nigerians, aren't they? They are. They just cannot protest. I mean, I'm sure that whatever is happening in the country also affects them as well. So why not show their own solidarity by saying, why we cannot protest? This is what we will use to support you. Give you fuel.
Well, so that's the thing. Fuel. Fuel for what?
Fuel for what?
To come up again tomorrow? The same venue?
Well, they suspended the protest.
With this kind of fuel, people will look forward to another kind of...
It's not jollof rice.
It's a fuel.
It's not petrol either.
You know, the situation of the economy, biscuits, water, anything could go a long way to several people. You never really know.
Yes, why not protesters who are, you know, getting their voices heard on behalf of Nigerians? They need fuel to speak.
You know, speaking about which, one of the things that also stick out to one of the dailies here as Daily Trust is not a big lead on the front page compared to the banner headline you see on the front page of Daily Trust. Just beneath that one, where you see Army Court Martials, 1 officer, 16 soldiers over gun running in Jos. And you know, these things are all connected. We've talked about the cases, confirmed cases. The former Attorney General, Commissioner for Justice in Akwa Ibom also did say that copiously on the program several times, how they had tried some security officials who were guilty. They were eventually found guilty of supplying arms to robbers, aiding and abetting. Clear case, an established case here. So when you see some things go on in some states, you know that you have to look wide in terms of who is responsible, what's going on. And the impact, farmers can't go to farms. And when farmers can't go to farms, food crisis. So all of these things are never in isolation. They're always connected.
Indeed.
So it's important we keep our eye on the ball. Yes, and not get carried away with several other things. Of course, government is there to ensure that they've addressed all of these challenges, but ensuring that these kind of things don't go unnoticed or they don't get a slap on the wrist is hugely important.
Extremely important, Chamberlain. Another thing I'd like to just highlight here on the front page of the Vanguard newspapers. Yes, they've talked about how the MPC held finally yesterday. I would advise every single person who is enlightened enough to try and watch the brief of the MPC that was hosted by the CBN yesterday. A lot of things came out in that brief. Don't forget that the MPC has not held since July last year. So this is the first time we're getting to see it in about 8 months. And quite a lot was revealed in the MPC yesterday. Part of it is this suspicious $26 billion passed through Binance, Nigeria, in 1 year. And the CBN governor was very specific, Binance, Nigeria, because I think 2 days ago, those who trade on those kinds of platforms noticed that the Naira gained demonstrably against the US dollar. And they've been saying, are you sure that some people are not behind this? We know that there's scarcity, but even with the scarcity, we still know that there are dollars in accounts, in people's accounts, and also in systems directly not controlled by the Central Bank of Nigeria. And it does appear that the CBN has a handle on that now, for them to be able to say that $26 billion, not Naira now, $1 billion suspicious,
wow,
passed through this. And not only that, they also talked about how, you know, this is in the last year, the CBN intervened with about 10 trillion. He says he's not talking about ways and means. 10 trillion Naira interventions into the Nigerian economy. I'm not talking ways and means, those were his words. And he said, what is the biggest budget? Or what is the budget of the biggest state in Nigeria? What was the budget of the Nigerian government? It only tells you why we're where we are. Too much liquidity in the Nigerian system. It's like too much candy. We're like children in a candy shop. And when you eat too much candy, what happens? You suffer from diarrhea. And when you suffer from diarrhea, when you're about to get cured, what happens too? You know, pills are usually not the most pleasant to swallow. So this is where we are. I would say again, if we are able to, let us watch what transpired on the floor or what happened at the MPC review yesterday or the MPC briefing yesterday, the CBN governor spoke extensively. But I think it's also important to mention that while it says we appreciate that, the CBN staff will try and do what they need to do with media to ensure that everything is orderly, around, media and how they ask questions. Can we also say that it is an opportunity, it's a very rare opportunity for media houses to get to speak with the CBN governor? Can they stop censoring questions?
That is the part that just beats me. It's I don't know why they do all of those things. They think if they prevent authorities or you ask them questions, look, from the way the CBN governor looks, he looks like one who wants to address issues and speak to those kind of issues. So why will they censor all of this? It doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't.
Because the people just need to get their questions answered. The people need to be heard. So if they keep doing that, anyway, I think we'll ask Prof this morning because, he's going to join us today. So I'll just keep your gunpowder dry. We'll go to that one with you. So, Ayo.
Well, thank you, Chamberlain and Mokwe. I'd have loved to stick with what you're talking about. Yesterday, when we engaged Dr. Binder, you remember he kept hammering on communication. And at the heart of communication is engagement. And there is no engagement if you do not talk to people and you get feedback from them real time, responding to people, not reacting. Because that's what government officials do most of the time, not reacting to people, but responding to them. And part of the response that I'm expecting is what's going to be the response of governments at various levels to the labor protests that has been suspended. Look at the front page of the Leadership newspaper when it says that the protests, labor protests grounds states. Exactly how did that make the states feel? Yeah, thank you, Mokwe, for highlighting the fact that the governor of Oyo State joined in the protest himself, and he said there is hunger in the land. Amazing. So, Oyo State is an agrarian state. It's an agrarian community. So many communities in that state capable of producing food for the nation. So, is there any plan in place? I guess time will tell. How about other states in Nigeria who have this kind of reactions, where these things happened? That's what the Leadership says on its front page this morning. Hardship, labor protest grounds states. How did it affect the economy of each state? Well, thankfully it was largely peaceful. And thank you, Nigeria Police, for the work that you did to ensure that it didn't get out of hand. And thank you, NLC, for agreeing to suspend the strike. But dear Lagos, their governors all across the nation, where are you? What is happening? We want more states. We have heard Lagos State. We have heard Niger State. What of other states where these protests are? We know there is hunger in the land. And everyone agrees, at least a good number of people agree, that these are painful decisions that it has been said. Every presidential candidate said they would remove fuel subsidy and they would do some of the things that this current administration is doing. Forget about the how. Well, it is important, but exactly where are states? What is the collaborative efforts to be made to ensure that these pains do not affect people too much? It will affect, but can we ameliorate it? The state governors, again, I make this call. It's back to you, Chamberlain.
Yeah, well said, Ayo. So we'll hope to at least have a sneak peek at some of these matters as we progress here this morning. So stay on with us because we will be right back.
You order anything you want, and when you receive it, you celebrate with your whole body. Because when that tasty grilled chicken is here, the weekend starts. The ingredients for your favorite recipe just in time. And when the cake arrives, the party is on. Because receiving anything on Global deserves a dance. Download the app, order anything you want, and track it minute by minute until it arrives. Global, order anything, we deliver in minutes.
In this era of recovery, ability to engage virtual stakeholders successfully could be a veritable source of sustainable competitive advantage. Embark on a transformative journey with Texam's Effective Leadership in a Distributed World program. Join us from 9th to 23rd March 2024 for a dynamic 3-week online experience and a 3-day face-to-face session in the UK. This program will be delivered by illustrious Oxford-trained Professor Roger Dell's London Business School alumnus Professor Paul Griffith and Oscar-winning Ambassador Charles Crawford. Secure 25% early bird discount. Pay 2,407,500 naira for online and 7,864,500 naira for the UK and online sessions. Achieve, optimize, and win with Texam. For more information, email exec@texam.co.uk or call +44 7425 883791. Texam. Insights that inspire. Actions that change the world.
Do you know that you can now print all your essential items for event without even having to leave your home? It's the Cash Print Combo Deal for all events.
Yes!
Weddings, conferences, birthdays, burials, etc. Starting from 495,000 naira only. You get 50 invites, 50 A2 size posters, 50 16-page brochures, 1 large backdrop banner, 1 roll-up banner, 50 jotters with pens, and 50 souvenir carrier bags. Whatever event you're planning, we can adjust to your budget and quantities. Just send your pictures and other information through WhatsApp, and we shall send a design for your approval. Approve your design, and we will produce with super high-quality digital print technology. We can even arrange delivery to your location. Call us now on 0913-156-5016 or 0812-794-9323 or visit our social media pages. Casprints, digital printing at super speed.
With Global, you order anything you want, and when you receive it, you celebrate with your whole body. Because when that tasty grilled chicken is here, the weekend starts. The ingredients for your favorite recipe, just in time. And when the cake arrives, the party is on. Because receiving anything on Global deserves a dance. Download the app, order anything you want, and track it minute by minute until it arrives. Global, order anything, we deliver in minutes.
We are peaceful protesters. We have no reason whatsoever to attack anybody. We only implore them earnestly to explore the path of dialogue. Coming out on the street is not the best thing. But since they come out with it, we are coming out to express ourselves, to enlighten and explain the critical situation happening in the country to Nigerian people. We are peace-loving people. We have no reason whatsoever to go into confrontation with anybody for any reason.
The Nigerian people and the Labour Congress should go back and sleep and sit down, because this country belongs to all of us. As they have right to protest, and equally, we have right to protest as a citizen of Federal Republic of Nigeria. So everybody should withdraw his sword. Nigeria is made for all of us. It's not only made for NLC. Nigeria is not made for TUC. Nigeria is made for Nigerian people. If anybody make an attempt to bring this government down, it's not bringing the government down, it's bringing Nigeria down. I will not allow that.
All right, so that is part of what we'll be talking about this morning with Professor Tony Iradia, who is a lecturer at Akeredolu University, Okada. He's a broadcaster, sociologist, a lawyer. He was in mass comm department of Nasarawa State University. He left there 5 years ago. So clearly he's a member of the NUJ, the NBA, Commonwealth Broadcasters Association. There's so many actually, but Prof, let me just pause at that point. And good morning, sir. Thank you for coming on today.
Thank you very much, Chamberlain.
Well, we appear to be at a crossroad in the country. I know some will say, when have we not been at a crossroad in the last couple of years? But a lot is really happening, and people are internalizing things differently. They just look at different policies, and a few of the authorities speaking, but the results out there, of which several people hit the streets in protest, saying they don't like some of the things going on. How do all of these things come across to you?
Well, to put it the way you have asked it, I think it's part of nation building, just that it's taking quite a long time. We appear to be building this nation at such a snail speed that one doesn't know whether there's any movement. So invariably, there's a tendency for you to think that there's no movement at all. The protests are normal. As far as I'm concerned, what I saw in the last 2 days is the kind of thing I would like to see in a country that claims to be a democracy, where people can exercise their rights to say, we don't like what is happening, or we're not happy, so we want you to know that we're not happy, right? And the protest goes on, and it ends without incidents, without casualties that will start running here and there. And you see some people in uniform wanting to stop protests, which are an integral part of democracy. There's nothing wrong with protests, especially when it is meant to draw attention the way the one that has just ended now appears to be. Someone was discussing and quarreling with the NLC for suspending the protests. I don't think they are wrong. I think they've drawn attention. And anybody who has watched them, or maybe on TV, has seen that they made their point is clear. They have made their point. And having made the point, there is no need to create some collateral damage by continuously destroying things here and there or creating uneasy movement in towns and cities. So when there's demonstration like that, it's okay. And to a large extent, I think for the first time, I also like the way the government has taken it. It hasn't taken the same form we saw in the previous administration, where the Minister of Labor was always looking like a boxer, fighting with the protesters, especially the ASU, discussion, dialogue, talking, coming back, even if it means doing some diplomacy, but at least it takes the form of an enlightened engagement, not the one that protest is forbidden, protest is not allowed, government is busy saying the opposite of what they are doing and all of that. So I think that it's okay if this how it is going to continue, and if this how is going to improve, and if this how is going to make everybody do his own part of the job.
And speaking about everybody doing their own part of the job, will it be out of place, or how should we take this protest, interpreting it with regards to the communication of governments, both at the federal and state level, of whatever it is that they're doing? Can we say that this protest speaks to either the lack of communication or the results that people see in spite of the communication?
Well, Chamberlain, you know communication is a very wide concept. Quite often people think that it's only what you say that is communication. But researchers have shown that body language is louder than what you say. So when you talk about communication and you ask me, do I think they have done well? They are very far away from doing well, but they are better than others. The previous administration, communication was in the form of deceit. We're always hearing things that are not correct, right? And if you notice, for example, since 1992, when broadcasting was deregulated in this country, it's only the last 8 years that the National Broadcasting Commission and broadcasters were having problems and quarreling every day, and we're seeing fines, we're seeing shouts, arrest this one, don't you know? Because government didn't want communication. Whereas a great nation must be a communicating nation. We must be able to talk to ourselves and understand each other. In times past, some people thought communication was essentially the dissemination of information. No, communication has to be the management of information. You must not just say what you want people to hear. You must ensure that they understand what you are saying, and that is what you meant that they also understood, right? And that there's a feedback mechanism that tells us that, oh, there is some meeting of the minds. But if you just communicate whatever you like and you don't care what people are listening, then I was saying to your colleague this morning that we should not engage in the communication of the deaf. Because when you do, waste of time. You're not talking to anybody. The people you are talking to are not hearing you. Those who are hearing you are not believing you. So there's nothing going on.
What is your assessment or impression of the policies that the federal government has put in place? Because yesterday we had CBN governor speak, NLC protest, federal government also speaking about some of the policies. I don't know about state governments in this regard. But how do all of these come to you? Are we going in the right direction or what?
Well, you know, when you put a call across that I should come this morning, the first thing that occurred to me was you were probably going to talk about this thing you are saying now. And I made up my mind I was going to tell you that I didn't understand. I didn't understand what was said. All those things about increase of those economic and financial jargons, they don't mean anything to the ordinary person, you know. What we want to see is whether we can buy things, all right? Like the weatherman who, instead of telling you the day it will rain, is talking about scattered thunder, which you don't understand. So that's the kind of thing that I've seen in the communication. But most importantly, to come to the substantive issue, I think that one of the greatest problems of Nigeria is that public policy is politicized. It shouldn't be so. There's too much of politics in what we do. And until we reduce politicization, we can't make much progress.
Give us an instance of what you're talking about.
Oh, okay. There are so many things that the politicians have taken control over. They are not allowing technocrats, experts to operate. There's so much that is political. I give you what I'll call a simple example of, say, recruitment of staff into government agencies. Those of us who were in charge of those agencies many years ago, we were shocked to see what happens these days, that the agencies don't recruit staff by themselves. They are imposed on them. They are sent to them. There's nothing to prove that the person is suitable. But you just take him because he has been brought by the powers that be. Basic things. It's not just today. If you remember the case of immigration, where people had to die, where immigration exercise was done in the stadium. We forgot that we have always had an immigration service that has always done its job diligently. But because the ministers and political appointees wanted to take control of recruitment, it ended in a fiasco. That's part of that is politicization. There are methods of recruitment that agencies, parastatals have known over the years as part of their work ethics. All of a sudden, it's only the politician who has a point, who has his way, who says what will happen, irrespective of what people are doing. some time ago, I was compelled to write an article on a motion in Parliament where our National Assembly people were trying to set up law schools. I just can't understand. They were citing them in their villages. No light there. No road to the place. The law schools we have on ground are not equipped. How did you arrive? There is a legal education council. What does it do if a legislator is the one determining where a law school should be established and set? So there's something about policy and wanting to execute it. These days, there's no difference between policy and management. In our days, the ministerial group was in charge of policy. The day-to-day running of NTA was in my hands. Today, I don't think that's what's happening. I don't even think that a friend told me that since 2015, the Radio Nigeria has not recruited one staff. I mean, you can't continue like that. You need this staff to operate. Some people are resigning. A few people have died. You need to replace them, but they must be properly replaced, right? The federal character principle is not wrong. It should be applied, but it should be only those who are qualified. Take the best from everywhere, and you have a better system. But this one, it is take the relation of this man. Take the person, this one, they've sent this from so place. And many of these things are actually people in the corridors of power and not necessarily those in charge. Mm-hmm. It was starting in our time. And I was lucky, I had access to the president. So if you told me president said so and so, I would ask him. The man said, no, I don't know about it. Mm-hmm. Right? So, and that, it was just starting then. Now it's permanent. You don't, if you see anybody who's in charge of a public institution, not like yours that is private, they don't know what's happening there. They are just told. If anybody has been recruited in the last 5 years, he was sent. Right? There's nothing like audition. There's nothing like, you understand what I mean? Mm-hmm. So those things we cannot operate like that. You cannot have a ministry made up of administrators supervising a technical team. It means you are bureaucratizing project implementation. And bureaucracy is not something for projects. It's for administration.
Well, I say the line in which our conversation is going towards now, I mean, is almost bringing forward the Oransanye report, which the president now says he wants to implement. They've set up a committee and they've given them 3 months. It's 12 weeks, thereabout, to see how it is that they can implement the Oransanye report. Well, I'd like your feedback on that. I would want to go back a bit because, part of what is big on the land right now is the issue of hunger. We've seen the NLC protest. You have said it is welcome. It is what should happen in a democracy, and it should happen in a manner that is peaceful and people can get their voices heard. I'm just wondering, when you look at, because you've also spoken about communication and how government is communicating, you've said it's not just by words, it's also what it is that they have, or what they've done, their body language. So far, so good. From your own assessment, what would you say that what government has said that it is trying to do with regards to restructuring the economy and putting it back on track, does its body language correspond with what it is saying?
Of course it doesn't. We can only pray that some persons will learn and alter the pattern that we used to see. You see, if the Oransanye panel was set up to streamline, to reduce the size of government, to stop this bloated service, then we must start from the starting point. I don't think the president knew that he would do this when he came into office. And I won't blame him because developments are coming. It's probably the development that has made him to do this. Now that development has made him to do this, he will need to reduce the number of ministers. That is when you say examples are better than precepts, right? He will need to ensure that government is not bogus. It's not about the ministries and agencies that you merge. Those are not where the resources are coming from. At a point in time when there was already hunger and everybody was angry, we were buying 160 million naira vehicles for legislators. It doesn't just work. Even if you change today, I don't think that is something that we can forget in the next 2 decades. That somebody was buying a vehicle for 160 million to do a job in this country, and as usual, we talk about it for 2 weeks, it ends and it goes. So that thing has ended, and those cars are there, or they are supposed to be there. How can that happen? So if we are reducing government, we must reduce it properly. During the Murtala Mohammed regime, during the military era, there was this same problem we had, and there was a need for government to come down. It was the Murtala Mohammed Obasanjo regime. The first thing they did was to insist that the highest vehicle in the country is a 504. The president or head of state was driving a 504. So when you start from that way, the people below will know that you mean business. We'll all be on the same page. You can't sit down in the latest Jeep and be telling the rest of us to tie belt. Right? That is the difference between what you are saying and what we are watching, which is the question you are asking. So we must try as much as possible to let whatever we are doing simmer through the process. Let everybody know that this is what is happening. We cannot continue to have a system where pensioners don't get gratuity and pensions, and political leaders don't only get pension and gratuity, they get life pay after working for 8 years. Then I work for 35 years and I can't get 1/4 of mine in the same country. You can't have a system like that. What is it that the politician did that the rest of us have not done? That they have to have all of that, and we can't even have the little one that is given to us? So when you say all this, the Rosaye panel, for me, I don't want to be pessimistic. I want to believe that since President Tinubu has decided to be confronting difficult things, frontally, I want to believe that we should appeal to him to keep the tempo going. All right? You see, in 1959, we had the Mbanefo panel. That's like the Rosaye one. Right? That's 1959, before even we became an independent country. We've had Morgan, 1963, Adebo, 1971, Udoji, 1972, Dotun Phillips, 1985, Ayida, like that. We've had them. Ahmed Jordan, 1999. We've been having these panels. Nobody has ever implemented the reports of the panels. In 2008, MD Yusuf, Inspector General of Police, respected, was appointed to lead a team to reform the police. That team came up with 125 recommendations. Not one was implemented. So when you look at your own SAE panel, when did it start? 2012. Where are we today? What is waiting? The man submitted his report, then they set up a white paper committee, then they set up implementation committee, then they set up a review committee. Nothing is done. So invariably, some of the scandals that Rosaye brought out, we are all pretending as if we never saw them. So there was one agency, I think Airspace Management Authority.
Nama.
Good. Rosaye panel found that that body had 253 assistant general managers. 253. We didn't need any panel to be set up to implement that. What does it? Does it make sense? When they set up boards in our own sector, Video, Film and Censors Board, they had 54 members on the board. It just tells you that from the very beginning, there was no intention to do anything that is serious. Because if there was an intention, we won't go to that extent. So now we are discussing. I just hope it's not going to be just a discussion, that there will really be an implementation. And that implementation will take into consideration not necessarily the wordings of the Rosaye report, but global realities and what's happening today. We must look at it against that backdrop. You can merge different bodies, especially when they have things in common. But if you merge 3 bodies and you send them the money you used to send to one, it means you intended to kill them.
Do you think it's political for them to say that nobody's going to lose his or her job?
Well, it may not be. We can have people there, but as we have had, a lot of people in Nigeria who are in government services don't have schedule. In my days, I used to get requests of, please, can you transfer this person from here to Abuja? And I said, is there a table for him there? Nobody is considering that. Oh, the request is coming from X. So you have to transfer the person to Abuja. You have not looked, is there a vacancy there? Do we need somebody there? Is that a place that is even congested? If we can always have people that are roaming about. But my point is this. What is the purpose of the merger? Is this so that the objective for which the organizations were set up will be achieved? Right? If it is so, there's no problem. But if we are just merging for the sake of merging, then we are just wasting our energies. I believe that if we have organizations that are merged, one obvious advantage is that we will reduce the number of board members here and there, the overhead that will carry, the excess baggage that organizations carry, because these so-called board members just come there to ask for what they can get. They don't add anything to any organization. So government must start from starting point. Don't appoint anybody to an organization if he cannot add value to that organization, right? The person that you are sending to an organization must be able to add value before you ask whether he belongs to your party and therefore you want to help him. Government is not for helping parties. Government for all of us. It's not for one party.
Yeah. Let me speak about state governments in this regard. Do you think they're putting their weight enough in all of this that is going on in the country?
Some maybe, a very few maybe. I don't think generally, if you were to take government as a state government as an average body, the way a state governor operates is as follows. One, he seizes the money for local government. That already tells you that nothing is going to happen there. Why would you seize the money for local government if there's going to be a division of labor? If the Constitution has established a local government, why can't we allow it to function? Right? Then government or governors will tell you they don't have power. They don't have instruments of coercion. They are not in charge of police. But go and have problem with a state government. You will know whether they have instruments of coercion. So when it's convenient, say we don't, they are the ones. It's not state government that are funding police. They are the ones donating vehicles. They are the ones donating operational facilities to police. They are the ones holding meetings with police in their states. So when they tell you that they don't have power over police, they just say so to have more powers, not that they don't really have power when they want to use it. And then most of the things that are happening at the federal level have not gone down to the state level. In many states, they are still operating this cash situation. They are still doing Ghana must go backs. They are not following the latest. I wouldn't even say that the federal has done too well in that area because we do policies and we don't implement them. Some time ago, we heard there was going to be cashless. And this cashless came, not many people understood it. It appears to have gone because nobody is talking about it. But if you go to the bank, you will go to the bank and find a very long queue. Those who have cash, those who want to transfer are on the same queue. Yet you are encouraging cashless. One would have expected that you would set up a cashless line that will make people realize that, oh, if you are cashless, you get what you are doing easily. And that encourages people to go there. But if all of us are going through the same process, then there's nothing about cashless. So really, policies must be well implemented. We must know the purpose of a policy, the gains that we anticipated before we begin to jump into it. Right. So I think the Oronsaye thing is good, but we have to be careful.
Ayo.
You know, that you talk about the governors the way you just did, but I'd like to follow up on that for a bit. And you've spoken about the fact that some things are happening at the federal level that should percolate to the states but have not. So if you don't mind using the analogy of a vehicle or an engine, right? The federal government is part of this engine. The state governments, 36 of them, with the FCT, are part of this engine. But the question a number of people might be asking is there a vision, is there a direction that each of the state governments should pitch into, which would give them a sense of purpose to work for Nigeria, not just for their own individual interests? How do you see that togetherness, Nigerianness, playing out, particularly from the angles of the state governments? because it is in their communities, in their states, that the protests held and that the hunger is happening.
Thank you, Ayo. I think you are talking about what political scientists call collaborative federalism, where the different parts of a federation act together in the interest of society. That is a very good one if it happens, but it hardly happens in our climate. You know, there were two governors in this country during the last administration who decamped from one party to the other, and they said the purpose of decamping was to be able to help the president, right? They wanted to be on the same page with the president. You don't have to be on the same party with the president so as to be on the same page with him in execution. If there's a government project and there's a role the state is to play there, I expect the state to play its role. You don't need to decamp from one party to another and create political tension in the place and say that you are the reason you went to the ruling party is that you want to be seen to be on the side of government. That means you are not doing collaborative federalism, right? When the federal system, all the different tiers of government are supposed to be autonomous. And the Constitution has shared what each one should do. If everybody is doing its own, there won't be problem. If you go to the states, one of the things that you see that is almost common everywhere is this is a federal road because it is not tarred, right? It's causing a lot of havoc. So they put a signboard there, this is a federal road. And the question is, what are these federal roads doing in the middle of a state society? I mean, a state capital, the middle of it has a federal road. For what? That happened during the military when it was a unity government. And people thought that the headquarters can dictate what will happen. But that's no longer so. So many federal roads are not working. States are trying to do those federal roads, and they are quarreling with the federal government for doing that. But the states themselves are not doing their own roads. So your question is simple. We are not following the basic administrative procedure that is known as the systems approach, where everybody is playing his part, where an organization is looked at the way a human being is looked at, that has head, leg, hands, and all these parts have to work for the human being to operate well. I don't know when we can have that. I thought that was the purpose of the Governors Forum, which will bring a peer review, which will bring some level of collaboration among them, relating with the government and all of that. But if you tell me some level of collaboration that I see is when some state governors travel with the president outside the country. I don't know what that collaboration is. We don't tend to see the results.
Prof, interesting, but I'll stick with the state governments for a little bit. It is, given what you know, having lived for so many years and, being in broadcasting for so long as well, as many people believe, that Nigeria, almost every part of this country is very fertile. The states, the federal, everywhere is almost as fertile as the other, with one specialty or the other. Now, do you see a situation where the governors themselves can get ahead of the hunger crisis, the hardship? Because if we remove hunger out of poverty, at least there will be significant reduction in the pressure and the emotional crisis that people have to go through. Do you see a role for the governors in bringing down the cost of food in particular, which is the capital of inflation, the inflation rates in the country?
I think what you are saying is quite straightforward. It's not something that we can go into a lot of time analyzing. If a state governor can prioritize private power, whatever they call it, is schedule now that they are doing, that they can give power to some part of their states, they can jolly well prioritize agriculture. If you are telling them that they should change their priorities, if that's what you are trying to say, you have made your point. Hunger is the issue of the moment. So one will expect that people will move away right now from those other things they are doing to this aspect. But I met a young person who was talking with me in the airport the last time I flew, And we got into talking, and he brought up the same issue that you are saying. And I told him my experience that the reason why some contracts are more important, the reason why some projects are more important than others, is that those important projects are those ones from which those who own them can get back a lot of money, right? So if building roads and bridges is what brings the greatest profit, and you're telling the governor to go and do food, it's not that the governor didn't know that he should do food. He's more particular about what is bringing him profit. So let's hope that what this program is saying is that we're appealing to our governors to change the priority and know that the issue of the moment is hunger. And then let's face that for now. I think that's a great thing to do.
Absolutely. Well, you began, in one of your responses to Malcolm the other time, you spoke very, very copiously about communication. And I am very excited about it because I believe that without that, we really can't make any progress. But then, if you compare government communication to Gen Z communication, how much gap does government have to fill?
Thank you, Ayo. I won't use your term. I will use mine. You know, sometimes when I engage people in government and I talk to them about communication, we usually have a lot of problems. They tell me, oh, see, we are doing all of this, we have done this, we have done that. And I ask them, do you know who you are talking to? In this country, 60% of Nigerians are illiterates. And then when we start to use channels to reach them, we're only reaching 40%. Who is reaching the remaining 60%? It was this that the government had in mind when they set up the National Orientation Agency, to go about bringing the government news to the doorsteps of Nigerians, telling them in the language that they understand. But National Orientation Agency is still there. Why are they not doing this? Everybody will condemn them, but nobody has gone to find out what their problem is. In the last 10 years, National Orientation Agency has been getting money for salaries only. Is it the salary they will use to do mobilization and orientation of Nigerians? Will those salaries buy equipment for public enlightenment? All right?
Yeah, but even the private sector beginning to look at those places as markets. And we're seeing increasingly many broadcast houses now doing, I don't want to use the word vernacular, but doing broadcasts in Pidgin English, in the language that many people now understand. So why is it still so difficult for government to get its own communication through if these other people are somehow still broadcasting?
Well, for me, really, it's even more than that. If you say that there are broadcasting stations in the rural areas who are doing local languages, you'd have to convince me that the people have money to buy battery to listen to these broadcasts. It's people who are hungry, who are looking for money to buy food. You want them to buy battery and be listening to argument on radio, which does not help them. So we need to do communication from all sectors. What you have just said is not bad. They can do it, but they must do all others so that those who understand this will hear what you are saying through this method. Those who will be more comfortable with another channel will get the essence of government through that second channel. There's nothing wrong in talking to people as if you are speaking Queen's English, right? If they hear you. But you must target communication. As DG of NTA, I had the opportunity of helping the NNPC in those days to transmit a jingle which they brought to me against pipeline vandalization. We put in network news every night, and we're collecting millions from NNPC. It was okay for NTA. And then my friend and colleague who was then heading the NNPC asked me for my opinion. I told him, my brother, look, see, this money you brought, I can't reject it because we need money in NTA. But you are not talking to pipeline vendors by talking through NTA. Pipeline vendors are drinking ogogoro in the rural areas. They are not listening to NTA. They don't even have it, right? So if you want to talk to somebody and you are using a channel he doesn't hear, you are talking to yourself. And that's the issue with communication. It's the greatest thing in life. Not many people know. I tell governors when I meet them that the difference, that the world is divided into two. One part is the things that are done. The other part are those things that people know were done. The things that people do not know were done were not done, as far as people were concerned. Therefore, you must communicate and use different methods that can make the people you are talking to understand you and hear you. And if we have a thing like that, today, I'm sure NAFDAC is doing a lot of work, but not many people hear of NAFDAC because they're no longer doing that aggressive communication that the late Dora Akunyili did. That is the difference. You must get to talk to people and also understand them.
Yes, indeed, Prof. We do appreciate your coming on this morning. Professor Tony Radia is the broadcaster, sociologist, lawyer, and the lecturer. Thank you for coming on this morning, sir.
Thank you very much.
All right, it's business news time. I mean, the CBN did speak yesterday, so you bet you get to hear a little bit more analysis this morning with Ini.
Oh, thank you so much, Chamberlain. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Business Morning on Sunrise Daily. And yes, the CBN was very busy yesterday. After 2 days of meeting yesterday, we did hear what we've been waiting to hear. I guess it's the rate of the hike that caught a lot of people, because a lot of people had been expecting about 200 basis points. But no way, we did 400 basis points. That's 4%. So from 18.75% to 22.75%. I wonder how that will affect you. I'm sure if you watched our news at 10 yesterday, you got a bit of that. You get more this morning. But let's start from the global space, since we're living in a global world. Oil prices pull back in Asia on Monday as the prospect of delaying the United States rate cutting cycle and rise in the U.S. crude stocks offset a boost on Tuesday from news OPEC Plus might extend its output cuts. Let's look at the numbers right here now. We see Brent dropped 0.36% at $83.35 for a barrel. WTI 78. We see that the gap right there, you know, is really much at this time. $78.59 a barrel. That's down 0.49%. There's a bit of hope because we heard President Biden has been saying that there's hope that they might agree to halt military activities in Gaza for the Muslim holiday month of Ramadan. Perhaps that could be a little bit of buffer to oil prices. However, Israel and Hamas, as well as Qatari mediators, all sounded notes of caution about progress towards a truce in Gaza. All the factors affecting oil prices now. U.S. crude stocks rose at 8.43 million barrels on the weekend of February 23rd. That's according to American Petroleum Institute. Gasoline inventories also fell 3.27 million barrels, and distillate stocks fell 523,000 barrels according to data. These are the factors obviously leading to this drop in price. And we see there's ease in the Middle East, then things become normal, and supply, you know, is as expected. And of course, we'll see drop in price. But if the tension continues, and then the Red Sea tension, which is stopping a lot of ships from doing their normal deliveries and logistics are being obstructed, then things get even tighter than they are at this time. Moving over to the grain space now, Chicago soybean futures rose on Wednesday, but remain near their lowest level since November 2020, as cheap South American supply made U.S. beans less competitive in export markets, and speculators are bet on further price declines. Looking at the numbers right there, soybeans gained 0.3% to $11.44, and that's for a bushel. Corn futures also inch higher, but plentiful supply held prices near their lowest since 2020, while wheat fell with as bumper Russian production. Remember, we talked about cheap Russian grain circulating, especially that area, that's the European area, you know, and that, of course, is reducing prices. And I think Zimbabwe also gained a bit from that grain after months of travel. It landed in Zimbabwe. There you have it, wheat right there, and the most active soybean contract also on the CBOT and all of that. Well, beans are still pouring into the market at harvest progresses in top producer and exporter Brazil, whose crop has not been as badly hit by adverse weather as many analysts had feared a few months ago. Prices in Brazil are so low that the United States is importing Brazilian soybeans at this time. Corn is up. For a bushel, it's about $4.24, Wheat, we already told you, 0.3% down, $5.82 for a quarter of a bushel. Now let's get back to Nigeria, back home here. See what the currency did yesterday. A lot of efforts we've seen from the central bank. The day before, we saw that the Naira gained in the official windows, but yesterday was not so good. We saw that it weakened on NAFEX, lost 13 Naira 99 kobo, 1,598. That's for NAFEX. But at the Nigerian Autonomous Foreign Exchange Market, that's NAFEM, it lost 33 Naira to close at 1,615 Naira 94 kobo. A lot of effort by the CBN, and sometimes, we just want to ask what was left to do. We listened to Mr. Cardoso yesterday during the MPC, and we saw his heart, when he was talking. I think the first time a lot of us will see him really express himself that way, and perhaps express some of those frustrations coming from the comments that Nigerians have been making, but if they are saboteurs, I guess we should get them out and deal with them, and get things right in this country. Well, talking about the central bank, the central bank had released a statement denying the reports that it is resuming weekly sales to bureau de change operators. The regulator calls the story fake, with the aim to trigger panic and uncertainty in the foreign exchange market. On Tuesday, a circular purportedly signed by the acting director of corporate communications, Mrs. Sidi Ali Hakama, was noticed on various platforms, indicating that the CBN will resume interventions through the BDCs. Well, they have said that that's not true. However, there was also another circular, that's the fake one, that was circulating around, and CBN has come to say they are not giving intervention through the BDCs on a weekly basis. They are not doing that, but they have said that eligible bureau de change that meets the criteria will be given about $20,000, but they didn't say how often, but they were giving $20,000 to each qualified BDC to deal with invisible demands, and they're selling it to the BDCs at $1,301 for $1, and the BDCs are allowed to sell to end users at a margin not more than 1%. Please note that the CBN says it's not a weekly intervention, and the circular was signed by the bank's Director of Trade and Exchange Department, Dr. Hassan Mahmood. Busy day for CBN yesterday. Of course, the MPC, the almighty decision, the first one for Mr. Olaimi Cardoso. We had it live here, and we had, of course, the panel discussing it. But let's take a look back there. Sarah, our correspondent, was right there live, and she filed in this report at the end of the MPC decision announcement, and we'll settle on that after this.
This is the first Monetary Policy Committee meeting since July 2023 and the first under the new Apex Bank Governor, Yemi Cardoso.
I hope that decisions of the MPC.
The Monetary Committee meeting is coming at a time when inflation is at an all-time high of 29.9%, triggered by an increase in food prices and living conditions of most Nigerians. It is for this reason that the committee raised the monetary policy rate.
The committee decided to further tighten monetary policy as follows. 1, raise the MPR by 400 basis points to 22.75 from 18.75%.
Some reasons were attributed to the rising rate of inflation by the committee. This includes insecurity and poor infrastructure.
Considering the option of a hold policy, the evidence revealed that previous policy rate hikes have slowed the rise in inflationary pressure, but not to a desirable extent. Members considered various scenarios of hold and hike and concluded that inflation could become more persistent in the medium term and thus pose more regulatory challenges, if not effectively anchored.
The Apex Bank boss then gives an account of how a total of 10 trillion naira disbursed for various interventions over 6 years failed to yield the desired results.
The interventions that took place in the recent past were estimated in excess of 10 trillion naira. I'm not talking about ways and means. I'm talking about the interventions that you just asked about. Over 10 trillion naira. What was the budget of the federal government of Nigeria? What was the budget of the largest state in Nigeria? Do the math, and it will tell you the extent of damage.
The Monetary Policy Committee of the Apex Bank promises to continue to keep an eye on both the monetary and fiscal authorities to ensure that the nation's economy is restored to the path of growth, while projecting an economic growth rate of 3.3% for the year 2024. From the headquarters of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Sarah Chimugu, Channels Television News.
That's right. That was, well, maybe not the biggest news yesterday because we had the NLC protest and the cost of living crisis also, but that was a very big news yesterday. And of course, the impact will start from today because it came in late yesterday. So we have to discuss this with us, Dr. Muda Yusuf. He is the Chief Executive Officer of Center for Promotion of Private Enterprises. He walks into the studio now to share his thoughts already. We saw your statement yesterday. Yeah. I know you've always been against, good morning, Dr. Yusuf.
Good morning.
So I know you've always been against the CRR, and now we're having it at 45%. So in simple terms, what it means is any deposit from individuals, the bank is only allowed to send out or to give us loan 55% of that deposit. So that is another way the central bank is trying to squeeze money from circulation and perhaps mop up inflation. But you are never a fan of this.
No, you see, particularly those in the real sector, because we are concerned at this stage first about investment, we are concerned about production. Now, those in that space, they're already squeezed. Because even at 32.5% CRR, it was one of the highest you can find anywhere in the world. And that has implications for what you call financial intermediation. Because the whole essence of banking in an economy, primarily and fundamentally, is financial intermediation. And what that means is that the banks have to mobilize resources from the surplus end of the economy to the deficit end of the economy. So if you have a situation where you have not even moved it up to 45%, so that means for every 100 million naira deposit, 45 million will be taken out. On top of that, you have a liquidity ratio of 30%. So 30% of what is left has to be kept in liquid assets. So what is left for lending?
But I mean,
where is the relationship between the banks and the economy?
No, but doesn't it reflect the state that we are in at this time? Seems we are in a desperate state where headline inflation is almost 30%.
You know, even you have said it several times. The key drivers of inflation are not necessarily the credit, because this is going to affect the capacity to lend. This is not a credit-driven economy. The ones that will be affected the most are the few operators in the economy who have exposure, credit exposure to the banks. And you know what the banks are? Once there is this movement, I'm telling you, by this morning, many of those who borrowed money from the banks are already receiving notices of upward review. And the challenge with credit is that you're already locked in. You have taken the money, you have invested it, you have bought machinery, you cannot exit easily. So this is why I'm worried about the implication for the cost of credit, about the implication for financial intermediation. Because if we are talking of growth, we are talking of job creation. It's about the capacity to be able to access funds. And from what we have seen, over time, this hike in interest rate has not actually impacted inflation significantly. And the CBN governor also
but he did say that it's because it was not backed up by maybe collaboration from the fiscal side, which has promised to handle. And I guess that's why he's also looking at, apart from talking to the coordinating minister of the economy, also dealing with the FX issue, hoping that putting all of that together will make an impact. Because I remember, during the former governor, it was a challenge for him, so much so that one of the MPC had to come to start reeling out maybe where we would have been, but for the hikes. Because there were questions as to, perhaps this is not the major driver of inflation in Nigeria, and so it cannot be the one to give the answer to reducing inflation in the country.
That is the point. Because the way the hike has come across now, particularly the magnitude, this is huge. This is the biggest, perhaps, in the history of MPC. You move CRR from 35 to 45, MPR from 22 point...
but Dr. Yusuf, don't forget that we have missed some meetings. So maybe we would have still been here at this time if we had meetings from July last year.
No, the important thing is that monetary policy instruments alone cannot deal with this problem. And to the extent that this is going to create a major squeeze, both within the banking system in terms of the financial intermediation role, and from the perspective of the investors in the economy, who also need funds to be able to create jobs and all of that. To that extent, I had expected that these things would have been gradual, irrespective of the fact that we have omitted some MPC meetings. And we focus a lot more on the biggest drivers of inflation. We are talking about FX. FX issue is not so much of this credit issue. It's more of a major issue, fundamental issue with supply. Of course, the CBN has been taking steps to deal with the issue of supply. The fiscal authorities have been taking steps to mobilize more foreign exchange. That is fine. And hopefully those reforms will yield some results. But to put all the pressure on those who have borrowed money from the banking system, I think it is likely to be counterproductive. That is the concern that I have.
So what do you see, how do you see this playing out now? Like you've noted, a lot of these people who are going to be immediately affected are those who have already taken facilities from the banks. How do you see it playing out now in the real sector?
No, it's going to affect them adversely, because we are talking about businesses who are already grappling with FX problem. They are still struggling with that. They are grappling with all these cost of the exchange rates, which the CBN has not really done something concrete about. We have been advocating that exchange rate should be fixed as maybe 1,000 naira. And that will bring some relief. They are grappling with the issue of cost of diesel. Diesel is now 1,003, 1,004. You know the implication of that. Then you have a populace that is also grappling with purchasing power. So this is a big issue. I admit that policies sometimes, there has to be trade-offs. In an attempt to solve one problem, you create another problem. But we have to look at these trade-offs properly so that the net effect on the overall economy will not be too profound. Because, quite frankly, the magnitude of this jump is too much for me. Yeah.
Then let's talk about the FX part too. Yes. The CBN governor was very emphatic about regulation and the new rules. And we did also see a statement yesterday that they will resume selling dollars to, or FX to, the BDCs. And some people said, isn't that one of the weaknesses of the former administration?
No, you see, the BDCs also have a role to play in the chain. Because when you talk about retail forex transactions, it should not be something that the banks should be dealing with. You need 500, you need 200, you need 1,000, 2,000. Why must you be going to the banks for that? So the BDCs are supposed to be attending to the retail end of the market, just as you have in the banks. You have the first-tier banks, you have those in the middle, you have the microfinance banks. The same thing should happen in this space. And because they relate, to the retail end, to the informal economy, they have a role to play. But the way we now channel the funds and the kind of margin, because I'm seeing a margin of whether 1% or something about what they are giving. I don't know how they want to monitor that. That should be a tall order. So we may have to re-examine that. But I know that they have a role to play, either through this kind of channeling of some funds or giving them some other windows for them to be able to also get funds directly, which they can also make available at the retail end of the economy. We have so many small businesses. We have a very big informal economy, and they have easier access to the BDCs because the volume of documentation, those things are much less. So the velocity of transactions is much faster with them. They respond very fast. They don't waste your time. So they also have their own value, but we need to have a framework that will also prevent abuse.
Exactly. I guess that's where the governor says regulation is going to be. They're going to be very strict about regulating.
They have to be very strict, and we need to also watch out for illicit funds. I think he also referred to that because there are a lot of funds in the system that are also chasing these effects. Funds that were not products of any genuine economic activities. So this is also creating distortions, and these are variables that we need to capture in the policy process.
So Dr. Yusuf, now, we're meeting again in about a month.
Yeah.
What do you see between now and then? I guess that will also determine the decision that we will have then.
Well, of course, the CBN will have to monitor the trend, the impact on inflation, the impact on FX, and what the fiscal authorities are also able to bring to the table. So, the totality of that will determine what the next step is. But certainly, not to go and put additional pressure again.
So you think
on investors.
Perhaps by March, either there'll be a hold or a cut?
Yes, something like that. No, at best, maybe a hold.
At best,
a hold, yes.
All right, Dr. Yusuf, thank you so much
for
your time this morning.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, now let's get to the market now. Well, the announcement was made late yesterday at about 3 o'clock. Started by 2, so about 3 o'clock. So, of course, it was too late for the market to react. So, of course, we expect the markets to react by today. But let's see what happened at the close of trade yesterday. For the NGX, the equities markets in Nigeria, is still in the red, 1.39%. And we're losing that 55 trillion naira. But I think the heartbreaking one is that we're now on 100,000. That's so close to the edge. I don't think we want to get back to that figure right there. We're just now doing 100,000. Now, if we see the movers of that market yesterday, we see volume value all in red. Deals just at 9,000 at the close of trade. And the top losers, FBN Holdings, Multiverse, and the almighty MTN Nigeria. Let's go to the fixed income market now. Federal government bond opened again quietly yesterday. Activities still in the early hours of the trade. Most market participants traded cautiously because they were still waiting to see the result of that meeting, which we saw at the end of the day. So at the end of it, we had 39 deals worth 41.80 billion. And I think we also have the auction for the second quarter, but let's stay on the MPC. And we have Bosun Obembe. Hi, Bosun, good morning.
Thank you for having me.
Great. So I guess it was too late by the time the MPC decision came yesterday. But there was a lot of quietness, even from the day before, from Monday to yesterday. And we didn't see a lot of movement because I think investors were just waiting to see what the decision would look like.
Yeah, so it was a calm section yesterday because the market already expected that MPC will increase the rate, and it's already been factored into this bond pricing. If you look at the Treasury stop rate for last week, it was at 19%, so which was higher than the MPR of 18.75. So expectation was that this rate will go up. So it wasn't really something that is not expected. And but we have the NTB auction coming next week because we got the calendar for the second quarter auction yesterday. So for what we're expecting that based on the trend, what we've seen is a DMO usually overset. So we expect that because the NPR is the transmission mechanism for all rates in the market. So we expect that at the next auction, next week we have about 361 billion maturing, which DMO will roll over. And based on trend, they will oversell as well. So by the time they oversell, we'll see the impact of this movement in rate on the stop rate. But if you look at the yield, currently we're at the 23%. So there is a need for a little uptick maybe next week.
What about FAC inflow? Is that impact over?
So what the FAC inflow would do is to actually boost the system liquidity. But remember, if you look at the decision yesterday, the major one is the increase in CRR from 32.5 to 45%. That is a lot of money that will leave the system. So I believe by the time the FAC comes in today, most of it will be debited by CBN as CRR, because most of the bank they've not made it 45% CRR ratio. So by the time you look at maybe a bank that has say 1 trillion in deposit and CBN has increased the CRR to 45%, so that is 45% minus 32.5% before. So that is a lot of money that will leave the system. So there will be a lot of liquidity leaving the system. So by the time FAC comes in, is going out with the increase in this CRR.
So from your perspective now, by the time the MPC is meeting again next month, a month from now, do you see the issue of inflation being, even if at least touched, even if it's on the surface, with all of this aggressive mop-up technique?
I think we've already started seeing the impact of this CBN policy. The objective is to actually target the inflation and to address the instability in the exchange rate, which at least from what we've seen some interest from the foreign portfolio investors. If you look at the exchange rate, before now it was trending as 1718. But yesterday there were a lot of clients looking to actually offer their funds at 16 level, so which was something unusual before. And then most of these guys, what they were using this money for is to buy Treasury B, which are getting at 18 to 19%, which I think they are comfortable at that level. So by the time the FX, they bring the FX.
I think we lost Bosso Bembe there. Okay. Bosso, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, yeah, you were off for a bit. Could you conclude your thoughts?
So I was saying that we saw a lot of foreign portfolio investors, so they are bringing in the dollars and they are converting it to Naira. So the Naira is leaving the system. So I was saying there will be a lot of illiquidity in the system, liquidity squeeze. And by the time they have the next MPC, I'm sure rate will have found its right level at that time. And so the conversation will be around, okay, looking at maybe if there's going to be an increase, it will not be like the 400 basis point that we saw yesterday. I believe the CBN is actually doing the right thing. The only thing left is for the fiscal side to do their own portion. I believe the CBN, from the monetary side, they've done their own part. So the fiscal side has to do their side too, to address and control the inflation.
Yes, obviously, the economy cannot run only on the monetary side. There's a need for a handshake between both sides. But thank you so much, Bosso Bembe, fixed income dealer with Access Bank.
Thank you for having me.
So we'll be counting the rates and hoping that the numbers around the inflation rates drops, just before we have the next meeting, so we cannot have that much of aggression when they are tightening. But that's the much we can take here on Business Morning. Back to Sunrise Daily.
The 37-kilometer rail line built by the Lagos Metropolitan Area Transport Authority is ready for inauguration. Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu, his deputy Kadri Hamzat, the managing director of Lagos Metropolitan Area Transport Authority, some state executive council members, and the Lagos State Environmental Sanitation Enforcement Agency are out to inspect the infrastructure facilities of the Red Line station. The team embarked on a train ride from the Ikeja Mega Station, viewing Akeredolu, Agege, and Iju stations while on the test drive. While on board, Governor Sanwo-Olu moved along the coaches in a bid to ascertain the conditions. The train set of Talgo wagons built in Milwaukee, Wisconsin in the United States. Governor Sanwo-Olu returned to Ikeja train station within 15 minutes and says the project is ready for commissioning. One of the major issues for the government is getting traders off the rail tracks, despite several warnings on the dangers.
We've had a journey all the way to Iju and back, and I think you as journalists can better report what you saw. So we still have a few cleaning to do inside the trains themselves, because they still have wrappers and rest of it. So it's probably just all of that, and to continue to test, the air conditioning, which is working, because they all came from different climatic weather.
The state government says enforcement exercise will continue to clear the train path of unapproved activities.
The challenge around pedestrian on the track, and the kind of wrong things we saw, on those tracks. So you've seen that we continue to do the enforcement. We will continue to do physical barricades on those lines, working with NRC. But the message here is really for our citizens and people that are living virtually on the track, that a track is not a place of residence.
The Red Rail Line infrastructure will be inaugurated on Thursday by President Bola Tinubu. Trips on the rail corridor will be a regular one, and residents must stay away from the tracks to avoid any fatalities.
Well, as you have seen, the governor of Lagos State has tested the Red Line. It is due for takeoff. In fact, commissioning is to hold tomorrow. We'll get more details about that from Abimbola Akeredolu, who is with us here in the studio. She is the Managing Director, Lagos Metropolitan Area Transport Authority. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much for having me.
Well, it must be exciting times for you and your organization.
Yes, we're quite pleased. It's been 2.25 years worth of work, and we're really glad to be here. So to be at this point at this time.
How does this Red Line differ from the blue?
So the Red Line is, first of all, its location. It's going from the north to the south. It's going from Akeredolu to, the whole length of it will go from Akeredolu to Marina. We've done the first phase of it, which is going from Akeredolu to Oyingbo. It's also sharing a track with the NRC tracks. So it's sharing the Lagos-Ibadan rail track system. We will share their track up until Ebute Metta, and from Ebute Metta onwards, it would be dedicated to Lagos State Red Line system. The third and major difference is the fact that these ones are not electrified tracks. They will be run by diesel multiple units, and so it's also that difference is in the way in which it is fueled, in the way in which it is powered. And we've had to utilize DMUs because we're sharing track with NRC. I know that in the future, NRC would look at electrifying their own tracks as well, which would be a different system to what we have on the Blue Line. So those are the three major differences.
Naturally, it will be interesting to find out from you what reviews, what are some of the feedback you've gotten from the Blue Line that might be useful for operating the Red Line.
Okay, so
A lot of the feedback that we've gotten is about, inadequacy of service. One of them is that, the people standing, there's not enough seats. And for now, we have 3 sets of rolling stock. We run 52 commercial services every day on the Blue Line.
Wow.
And the vision is that we will increase it. If you know that recently, Mr. Governor went to China, we have placed an order for 3 additional sets of rolling stock for the Blue Line as well as the Red Line. So the plan for the government is to continue to increase the number of services that we offer. So on the Blue Line, for instance, you get a train every 25 to 30 minutes. That Blue Line is designed for every 3 minutes. So we still have a long way to go. Another one is that there are not enough seats. And really and truly, we just have to continue to educate our people that this is a metro system. The possibility of having adequacy of seats on it, especially during rush hour, does not exist. But in fairness to the people, there has been very good adaptation to a new system, because for us in Lagos, it is a new system. Ensuring that they stand behind the tactile paving, ensuring that they wait for the passengers to come off first. Those sorts of etiquettes we reiterate daily, and they are adhering to it, and they're adhering to it very well. We've made a lot of advocacy around don't cross the tracks, and we find that the Blue Line tracks are not being breached in any way, shape, or form. We've only had 1 incident of someone trying to breach it in the 6 months or so that we've been running, and so that has been very good responses. Now, the big challenge that we have is the integration challenge, and that is, we've had a number of complaints about that, and that's something we're working on. And obviously, we need to take it onto the red, which is when they come. So you think about it, a 2.5 hour journey, you can now do it in 25 minutes. You get to Marina, and you are going to Eco Hotel, or you are going to Victoria Land, and you are now having to wait 30, 40 minutes because the buses are not adequate. So that is the one big complaint that we're getting, inadequacy of the follow-on form of transportation. And we're working with various other private sector players in the market to see how we can increase the number of buses that we have. So the first and last mile buses sit under the train station. We have some high capacity buses that come. But if you think about what we have, a rail system will come and will bring about 950 people. A bus will carry, even the high capacity will carry 74 passengers. So the challenge is real, but we are working.
I'm particularly excited about the fact that, the feedback you've gotten from people, that essentially you're saying that people are taking ownership of this product. No vandalization and all those
So we've not, in all fairness, like I said,
wow,
very good. The people have been very good. We have had very few cases of vandalism. We've had very positive reviews from the people who have said, oh, it's cut my journey. I don't have to wake up at 4 a.m. There was one particular one someone said to me, said, oh, I needed to do something in Lagos Island for 5 o'clock. I looked at my time, it was 4. I knew I couldn't make it. Then I remembered Blue Line works. And I got there and I was back in my house before 5:30. So he sent me a message to say, well done. So for us, those are very, very positive things. And I find that the big challenge is for them is this integration, and that's what we're going to keep working on.
Okay.
It's not being vandalizing of our infrastructure.
That's amazing.
And I think it's because it's electric.
Okay. I don't want to get into that one now, but is that a challenge you're foreseeing with the Red Line?
So it's a challenge for now. If you notice, in the past 3 weeks or so, whilst we've been doing the sensitization for a while, there's been a lot of clearing along the tracks for the Red Line. And that is it's a big challenge for us because it's a mindset position. Those people have been on those tracks for decades. They've been living alongside a rail system for years. And even when we go and we talk to them and we explain to them, you really can't be here, they tell us, oh, no. We've been here for, why is your own different? We've been running, trains have been running here and we've been here. So we've been telling them because the frequency will be very different. So NLC would run maybe 2 services in the morning or 2 services all day. by the time we combine ourselves with NLC, there could be 6 services in an hour by the time we're done. So we're telling them, the time is going to take you to move your stuff, you have to move it back. So you cannot, and in fairness, for their own safety, they can't be on the tracks. So we're constantly talking to them, we're constantly moving on. And yes, it is a big challenge, and we really want to implore the people of Lagos to say, kindly do not walk on the track, do not do commerce on the track, do not sell on the tracks, do not even use it as a shortcut. Some people feel they can just cross the rail tracks to get to the other side. We're putting pedestrian bridges everywhere. There is no way anybody should be interacting with tracks. It's very dangerous.
Anyway, maybe that's ongoing conversation. But then that is for the blue line, which is electrified. It's also...
It's a big problem on the red.
Okay.
It's a huge problem on the red. They're selling on... We don't have that problem on the blue anymore. But the red is where we have the problem.
Okay.
Because people are there. Before doing Bull Station, which is one of the stations that we have, which is integrated with that bus terminal. It's like a market.
Okay. Describe to us how the red line will work.
Okay, so the red line will start from Akeredolu and go to Oyingbo. It is integrated with the intercity rail system. So the Lagos to Ibadan rail system, we share their tracks, like I said, from Akeredolu to Ebute Metta. Now, if you get onto any of our stations, we have stations at Akeredolu, Iju, Agege, Ikeja, Oyingbo, Mushin, Yaba, and 8. The last one is Oyingbo, I think. Correct. So what that does for you is that imagine if you're coming from Ibadan and you want to access those stations. You come from Ibadan on the intercity rail system. You get off at Agege. Now at Agege, our own station, so the intercity station and ours are adjacent. You can walk and get onto our station, get onto the red line that will give you access to all these stations I've mentioned. If you continue on the Lagos-Ibadan, the only station you'll be able to access would be the Ebute Metta junction, because that's the next station they will stop at. So there's integration between us and the intercity system. The system will run on diesel, like I said, so we will have diesel DMUs. The first set of coaches that we will be using are the trains that Mr. Governor went to Milwaukee to get. They're 10 and 11 car coaches. They will be able to, each coach will take about 100 people, so they will be able to move 1,000, 1,100 people every time we move it. And we're working with NLC to ensure that we sync our programs, we sync our timetables, such that we will have set times and they will have set times. We also have integration between our bus terminals. So we have the train station and the bus terminal in Yaba, for instance. They're 2-3 minute walk away. The same with Oyingbo, the same with Ikeja. In Agege, we're creating a bus halting station around it. So what we're trying to do is to encourage or to bring forth this integration system that Lagos has been talking about, multimodal integration. So on the red line, all of the stations we're ensuring that we have bus terminals that integrate with it, whilst we also integrate with intercity.
Talk to us about security.
Okay.
On the track, on the train itself, during the train service and all. Are there issues people need to give attention to?
Okay, so with what we've done with security, and that has been fully implemented on the blue, we have track cameras, we have station cameras, but we also work with the police. But more importantly, we work with Lagos State Neighborhood Watch. And they mingle with our passengers. So if there's any issue, they can quickly discern it and then put a call through to the police so that when the passenger comes off, there'll be somebody waiting to pick them up. In terms of security of our assets, the cameras have been hugely useful. We have control rooms. We have a central control room that belongs to Lamata, and we see everything on the blue line. And that's what will happen on the red line as well. So there'll be cameras on the red line, there'll be cameras along the track, there'll be cameras within the stations. And all of that will also be linked back to Lamata's control center. But beyond that, we will have 2 major stations on the red, just like we have on the blue, National Theatre and Marina. There are 2 major control centers along the blue line, and there are control centers within those stations, and there are people there manning those cameras 24/7, and that's the same thing we'll do on the red.
You know, naturally, a number of people will be looking at one of the issues a number of people will be interested in is profitability. We've heard it said over and over again that rail services are very expensive, they are enablers and all of that. But at the end of the day, if it doesn't pay for itself, there's going to be questions about how sustainable it is.
Okay. All right. So the one thing, you've said it, you cannot, I don't believe a government will look at the rail system and be looking to recoup its money that it's used to build it. But what we are trying to do is to ensure that whatever we earn from that infrastructure can operate it. And I think that's where the government is at. The ability to also, over time, look at other ways and means of ensuring that we earn money that will then make it. It would never really be profitable, but it would make sense. It would begin to make sense to government. And that means that you need to look at other forms of revenue that you need to learn to flog that asset. You need to look at other forms of revenue you can get and generate from it. So you build TODs around your stations. You ensure that your stations have commercial outlets that you can rent out. You ensure that advertising is rife on that asset that you have. The position must be that government must look at that asset and ensure that that asset is worked to bring in as much revenue as it can. And I think that is the way that all over the world you begin to utilize your real assets. So you are correct. There's no country that's making money out of railway, but the money that the state will make is ease of movement, economic growth. When people can move easily, I can do more business. If I take 4 hours to do my to and fro journey, and suddenly I'm doing it in 1.5, I'm freed up to do more business. And that means government gets more tax, people are more gainfully employed, the city is better for it.
Well, I'm not sure that my colleagues in Abuja will want to join in on this conversation, but let me just ask you this. How many, just for those who don't know, this is the second in the long list. How many are there, and why are there so many?
Okay, so we have 6 metro systems, and we have one monorail system. And what it is that in any city, you must look at your population. So the Strategic Transport Master Plan did a holistic view of what happens in Lagos, how people move, where people are living, where people are likely to live in the future, dependent on how you have built your infrastructure. To that end, Lagos is a city that has over 20 million people, and that's being conservative. And it is slated to be one of the largest cities in the world. So you are looking to accommodate, not just accommodate, but to move 25, 30 million people daily. So therefore, you need a very robust transportation system. And I guess that speaks to the why we have 6. Most cities have more than us. There is a lot. And the reason we are even constrained to the 6 for now is because of space. Lagos has all these people, but really and truly it's a very small city in terms of size. So what we have done is to maximize the design of these rail systems. We've ensured connectivity between the rail systems, so the 6 that we have, they connect adequately together such that you can change and ensure that you can complete your journey. But beyond that, we keep talking about an integrated intermodal system. That integrated intermodal system takes cognizance of the fact that Lagos is surrounded by water. Lagos State is developing its water transportation. We're developing our road transportation. The minute we ensure that we have connectivity between those modes and people can go from one to the other seamlessly in systems integration, location integration, fare systems integration, then people will find movement a lot easier. And when we do, and that's part of the reason we have 6 plus 1 monorail.
Well, I want to ask you about how many states, if any, have come to you come to Lagos to say, look, Can we understand exactly how this runs, whether you have had any such, you may want to speak to it later, but I want to first of all find out from you. You spoke about the challenge of educating people about the need to vacate the rail lines and communities and under bridges and all of that. There are those who will chunk that in the department of inadequate communication, because it is one thing to push out information to people. It's another thing for people to own the information to the level of saying, look, we're going to do this simply because we believe what, the authorities are doing is a good thing for us.
Okay, so good question. And when we look at it, and I will take the Blue Line as an example. Before we started the Blue Line was like a myriad of people lived on the tracks. And we had everything and anything going on the tracks because the people could not see why you were telling them to leave. Now, we've had all of those months of advocacy. We've spoken to them. We went out regularly, and now we don't have anybody on the tracks. Now, with the Red Line, the challenge we have is the fact that they've been there for decades, like I said. So it's not going to be something that will happen overnight. And what we're doing is we're constantly talking to them. We're constantly going there. Mr. Governor himself has been along that corridor at least 4 times in the past 5 or 6 months. And he himself, when he goes out, he stands with the community, he explains to them. We push out information regularly. We're on radio, we're on jingles, but more importantly, we go to those communities. We go to the local government chairmen, they speak to them. We ourselves, with the Ministry of Environment, Ministry of Information, we go out, we engage the market women who are there, the people who are there, and we explain to them why they can't. And what you're going to find is it will be something that will happen over time. In that sense, we also have to be responsible to ensure that in our rollout, we take cognizance of the fact that people have to get used to it. So we will not start 6 trains an hour from when we start. We will start maybe 11 trains a day. And we're continuing to talk. Because what we know is that it has to be a sustained effort. And when people see, you will realize that Lagosians do interesting things, but when they actually get it, they get it. And they won't go there. They will find other places to go.
Let me ask you, people listening to you now may want to engage with the authority, with Lamata, and say, look, you need to give attention to this and give attention to that. In the name of engagement, how do they reach your
So we're very active on social media.
Okay. All right.
Very active on social media. And please don't ask me mine. Too old.
Well, okay, so talk to us about the commissioning you said is happening tomorrow.
So the commissioning that's happening tomorrow is a definitive statement that says that all of our infrastructure is ready. Okay. So we expect Mr. President, we expect a lot of people from all over Nigeria to come. And that means that we can now start testing. So the whole of tomorrow we'll take the president on an inaugural ride on one of our trains. And then once that is over, that's a ceremony that says we're done. Okay. We now begin the testing, and we will test.
So it's not ready for use?
For commercial, no.
Commercial, yes.
It is ready for use, but we will not go commercial immediately.
For how long do we have to wait?
So we will, this will be a lot shorter than the red, because the red was electric.
You mean the blue?
I'm sorry, I apologize.
I understand.
The blue would be, the red would be a lot shorter than the blue. Okay. So we expect no more than 2 months. Okay. And in that time, it will be constant engagement. And we would push out the trains and people will begin to get used to it. We would also invite, just like we did with the blue, the public. We would take the public, we will take them on it. All right. Things like payment now, most people understand it because it's the same payment system that we use on the blue that we will use on the red. Okay. So we will do that for a couple of months and then we will announce.
Well, exciting times await Lagosians, I seem to be hearing. We have to thank you very much this morning for being here with us. Abimbola Akeredolu is the Managing Director, Lagos Metropolitan Area Transport Authority, Lamata. She joined us here in the studio. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you very much.
Well, I'm not sure it's the same experience you guys are getting in Abuja right now. You have to wait for your trains, right? Chamberlain and Mokwe.
Just because it's wearing a red tie, now we won't get the last of it.
Wonders never cease.
We're happy for you, Ayo.
Congratulations.
Yes, thank you. Okay.
Well, we do have some messages coming through. Kenneth, talking about the Oronsane report, says, good move by the federal government, but we should not forget, as a nation, that the country needs to reduce the cost of running political offices at all levels of government to enable the poor breathe, he says.
That's from Kenneth. So this one is from Dixon Eka, which we couldn't take yesterday. He says, I commend the courage and doggedness of President Tinubu for trying to implement the Oronsane report, which his predecessors could not attempt to implement. But I hope this is not a calculated attempt to divert Nigerians' attention from the current severe hardships in the country. Civil service reforms are needed to cut cost of governance and to enhance fiscal responsibility. But the major wastages affecting the country are mostly with the federal government in the executive and legislative arms. Is it a case of robbing Peter to pay Paul? How can a government with an oversized cabinet be the one to merge some agencies? By my personal assessment, the cost of maintaining one minister may be more than running cost of some of these agencies. So why not make it one minister per state first? Mr. President should consider reducing the budget to his office, that of his ministers, and that of the National Assembly. If we may take this seriously, it must not be civil service alone. I think Professor Iridia also said the same thing.
Yeah.
Ayo.
Yeah, Abola Bolade is speaking about the labor strike, and he says the government should provide the enabling environment for the NLC to protest while working on the economy. We were using borrowed funds to subsidize fuel and the exchange rate for decades and busted our borrowing limit shortly before the end of the last government. The bold initiative to correct the pervasive and unsustainable anomalies is the source of the pains we're going through. There is, however, hope at the end of the tunnel. The government must ensure everyone is having a dose of the pains from the president to the messenger in our offices.
Thank you all for your messages. We do appreciate you all. We'll see you again tomorrow. I'm Chamberlain is up. Goodbye.
Can't believe it's Wednesday already. But whatever happens, we hope that you've achieved some of your objectives this week, just as Labour said they have with their protest. Wishing you a very productive day ahead. I'm Maokwe Ogun Yusuf.
What are you contributing to Nigeria today? Let that ring in the rest of your mind the rest of the day. I'm Ayo Makinde. You have a wonderful day.
How does double digits affect your purchasing power? What about ballooning debt profile and scarce FX? How's that affecting your business?
The federal government is turning to the money market to fund this deficit. Are yields contracting or expanding? Is this a good buy for you?
Inflation drives MPC decisions and affects sentiment at the equities market. What is happening to your investment?
Or would you rather go